Hey everybody, some quick programming notes before we jump into this episode of the podcast. We've been taking in a lot of feedback from everyone. Our intro is getting fixed very soon. I threw it together in GarageBand. Give me some credit, come on. We will be putting up some new content. There will be a video feed coming to YouTube very soon, so if you can get us to 100 subscribers, that makes our lives a lot easier. If you can, it's not a big deal, but we'll have to schedule things a certain way. So tell your friends, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, get the word out there. That'll help us out immensely. Even 100 subscribers will actually make a huge difference. Before we jump in, our guest for the night is Sir Shalazar Bastion. I'll be really honest with you guys. When we recorded this, it was on election night, and the results were coming in. So if we seem distracted at times, it's probably because we were. That being said, we tried to turn off the phones and put everything out of the room while we were recording. We want to have Shalazar back on for an episode 2. Ultimately, we're kind of capping ourselves at 2 hours because we all have jobs to do the next day. So keep that in mind. We are going to leave off in some places that we absolutely intend to pick back up on. But before we jump in, Sir Shalazar Bastion is in many ways one of the founding fathers of the Kingdom of Winter's Edge. He has an unmistakable charisma, and it's coupled with a people-serving attitude that we could all learn a lot from. We'll talk to him about his opinions on knighthood, some of the plans he has coming up for an augmented reality event, how Winter's Edge came to be, how we left Dragonspine, became a Principality. It's a lot of fun. We're going to roll the intro and get right into it, but I wanted to do some quick housekeeping notes before we got into it. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, this is Sir Flobojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm King Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this is WAK. We got a couple of serious ones under our belt.
Slept with the king.
And you become the champion day one and walk out.
I'm surprised your beards didn't get Velcroed together.
Explain that. You have to explain.
I haven't a clue.
That's why.
Some sort of LARP thing. I survived that. I'm not...
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, interview the Amtgard community at large, talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world.
Today we have with us Sir Shalazar. Dude, you nailed that.
Yeah, this is first time for everything, right?
I was going to leave it in, too. Shalazar, how you doing?
I am fantastic. Super excited to be here. Is that what a guest is supposed to say? It's my first time. I'm kind of...
Yeah, you're reading from the script. Perfect. Just keep going, and it's going to be fun.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
So Flo loves the...
No.
Coach,
Wrong
coach.
script. Wrong script.
Coach.
Page four.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
So
Flo loves to coach people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, he does. So tell us a little bit about yourself, man. You and I, a lot of people may not know this. I talk about myself being the old man in Amtgard. Shalazar and I actually joined at the exact same time. Our first event was the exact same event. It was that Winter War in what part of Kentucky was that in?
Bowling Green?
I think it was. It wasn't actually in Bowling Green. I don't think it was wherever the military base up there is.
Yeah.
It was put on by Rising Winds. It was. I think it was Winter War 2, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even 1.
Yeah, I think that it was 1. But tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in the game for a long time. What got you in? What got you started? What was your story to Amtgard?
So So way back in the day, I worked with this really crazy chick, and she was actually really cute. It just so happens, and she kept telling me about this group that her and her boyfriend did on the weekend called Amtgard, this thing that they did. And so, of course, like most people, I laughed and said, wow, what a bunch of nerds. And then she started telling me about all the things that you guys did after, what Amtgarders did afterward, and it usually included nudity. Am I allowed to tell this story? I'm just wondering. There's a lot of stories that I probably shouldn't tell on this podcast.
No, you're totally fine.
So as soon as she said, everyone came over to my house after Amtgard one day, and we all got naked and stuff like that, and I was like, I'm in. What do we do? Where do I sign up? Where do I put the blood? I mean,
jeez.
So, okay, I'm a little exaggeration, but it was. I mean, it was fairly close to that, and so she talked me into coming out, and actually, it was a lot of fun. Came out one day, and they were like, well, I actually came out and hung out and met the boyfriend and stuff, and who happened to be a guy named Zeb. Weird name, right? And so
Yeah.
he was like, well, we're not going to be at the park this weekend. We're actually going to Kentucky to this event. There's a big event. It's just a day event. We're going up there. I'm like, hey, I'll come. So here I was with these guys that were all dressed up in these funny clothes, and I was in a tank top and a button-down shirt, wide open, blowing in the breeze, and they dumbly gave me a pole arm, and I'm like, okay, I can hit people with this.
Right.
This is gonna hurt someone. So I had a blast. I had an absolute blast. It was fun, and so I came out the next week. And so my first day of Amp Guard was this event. My second day of Amp Guard was at Mystic Glade. And so I sat down with Zeb, and I asked him, I said, well, tell me about Amp Guard. What is Amp Guard? And so he was telling me about kingdoms and how they work, and shires, baronies, duchies, grand duchies, kingdoms. And I looked at him that day, and I told him, I said, you know what? One day, this park will be its own kingdom. I will make that happen. Before I leave Amp-Guard, this park will be its own kingdom. And a year later, we had the Principality of Winter's Edge.
Yeah, that's something that's come up several times on previous episodes, is just our journey from being part of Neverwinter to being a principality to eventually being our own kingdom. We always talk about it as, I think we were one of the longest lasting principalities.
Yeah, we were the
but
longest.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's, I was of the mentality back in the day that this is going to be awesome. We're going to rise up. We're going to become our own principality.
Right.
And we did that. And then once we were our own principality, all right, we're going to rise up. We're going to be our own kingdom. And it's like, why? I mean, not that it's a bad thing to be our own kingdom, but it's, why do we have to rush it? Let's make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
So let's take our time. And you know who instilled that in me was Sir Squeak. Sir Squeak was the one that sat me down and was like, look, it's okay. You could be kingdom forever, or a principality forever, as long as you're doing it right. You don't have to do it overnight. So, and that's the way I looked at it. So I was never in a hurry to be a kingdom. I was in a hurry to be a principality. I love Dragonspine. Dragonspine was our kingdom when I first started. Mystic Glade was under Dragonspine.
How did that shake out? Because by all rights, we should have been Neverwinter anyway. Dragonspine is way further west. We're much closer to Neverwinter. Because
that was never a thing back then.
Oh.
Borders wasn't a thing back then. It was so I guess the best way to explain it, Snicker Furfoot had the Atlas, the Amp-Guard Atlas, which was horribly awesome. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Snicker's Amp-Guard Atlas, because,
right.
I mean, it was a tool that was utilized like crazy back in the day. The problem was it was never updated. So everybody would go there to find parks. They'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to be in this area, so I'm going to call the people on the contact registry of this park so that I can go and talk to them. And the reason why I know this is because I did this.
I've fallen victim to this as well.
Yeah. I would go to the Atlas, and I would go, because what I did was, when I wanted to start the Principality, I went on the Atlas and I started where we were, which was Knoxville, Tennessee, and I just started branching out in a circle. I just did a circle on the map and started going to each park in the area. And then once I hit all those parks, then I would branch out to the next distance away, and then I would hit all those parks, and then the next distance, and the next distance, all the way out to Memphis, Tennessee, which is
that was a
god
rough
awful
trip.
long distance.
Yeah,
a god awful long distance. And so I started hitting all these parks, going, hey, we're all freeholds. Yes, I understand. Okay, you're not a freehold. You're under Rising Winds. You're under this kingdom. You're under this kingdom. Hey, we're under Dragonspine. none of us are anywhere near our kingdoms.
Right.
Why not band under one banner, fight under one banner, and be our own kingdom one day?
Yeah, and the advantage to that
so-
is pretty clear, right? All of the parks are then kind of centrally located within
Exactly.
distance of one another. Driving
Exactly. You're having more local events. So instead of driving 10 hours to 12 hours away to be in an event, you're only driving 6 to 7 hours.
Well,
or
yeah,
even
and you're
less.
potentially having your own events too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're having events that people from your kingdom can actually make it to.
Yeah.
Where, no one ever we were visited one time by members of Dragonspine, and Ben actually sorry, I forget his
Sir Rand.
guard name. Thank you, sorry. Brain fart on my part. He drove out, him and his wife drove out all the way out to Mystic Glade, stayed the night at Zeb's house, or Sir Gillen's house,
Right.
and brought us some awards. It was when I first got my Lord title. It was probably the coolest award I've ever gotten, because he drove all the way out from Arizona, or New Mexico, sorry, to award us that. And he awarded Chunk Baronet and Zeb Baron and the title of Defender. I mean, some cool stuff happened. I mean, it was one of the coolest times in our life, because at that time we didn't have any real acknowledgments from our kingdom, and because they were so far away.
Right.
So the fact that someone came all the way to Tennessee to hand out awards was just stellar. It was mind-blowing for some of us.
Just to take a moment here, and because you said something, and nowadays it doesn't have as much of an impact as maybe it did back then, but the idea of getting one of those titles back then was a big deal. You were announced at court that way when you were going to other kingdoms. Having some kind of title of nobility, and especially having a higher title of nobility, was a huge, huge thing. And Defender, which you also touched on, back then you had 3 criteria to get Warlord. And this was a time where Warlord and Sword Knight were not the same thing. You could be a Sword Knight and not a Warlord. So coming out and getting that one piece that Zeb was missing, that Gillen was missing, was a really big deal to all of us. It was an acknowledgement that, Dragonspine was acknowledging that they see the potential in this person to do this thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a huge thing. And the thing that made it so huge is not everybody around you had those titles.
Right.
Like, you go to a kingdom proper and they're like, okay, that person, all of these people have titles. Like, you can't have a peasants versus title, nobility fight, because everybody would be on the same team. There's just there's nothing you could do. So the fact that there was 3 people in our well, 4, because someone was a transplant, Calidor, Lord Calidor. With that, there was 4 people in our area, like, not even just our park, but our area, the whole of Tennessee, that had a title of any kind. So it was a huge thing, and it made us feel good, and it made us want to strive harder to do the things that we were doing. And so it pushed us. And I credit Sir Randall for that, because he taught me a good lesson that weekend. He taught me a good lesson, and the lesson was that even though you have these things that you're taking for granted, which in this case was the titles, he made them special by driving them there himself. So when I was king in Neverwinter, I made sure that every time I handed out anything that was a title or a paragon, at the time they were just masteries, or anything higher than a 8th, 9th, or a 10th or masterhood, there was a scroll, and it was in a frame. And I handed that out. Every one that I handed out during my year in office, they were in a frame. and
That's
it
awesome.
didn't make a crap to me. But I had someone in my outgoing coronation tell me that his little silly drawing, because I did the drawings myself,
Right.
and there was the silly barbarian. I drew a silly barbarian with weapons, different types of weapons around the border, and the wording is the same wording that you would normally see on a award, but it
Right.
was written by my hand with the drawing and put in a frame. And that guy come up, told me how much he appreciated that, and that it was still hanging above his bed.
That's
Now,
what I was going to
whether
say. Some of those still have to be in living rooms or
Yeah.
bedrooms today.
Yeah, and that made me feel like that was the whole reason why I did it. I mean, that right there, that one that one guy coming up and saying he loved it and he loves everything about it and it's still hanging on his wall tells me that I did the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson I learned from Sir Randall by letting me know, hey, just because I take that for granted doesn't mean the next guy's going to. And you got to make them feel special or it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
And it's those little things that make people stay.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that when you announced that we were going to be becoming a principality, I'm not sure exactly the logistics of how that happened, but were there any like hurt feelings, or was it kind of expected? Like, yeah, you're so far away. Why didn't you do it sooner? Like, what was that like?
No, absolutely not. Actually, the first thing I did is I called up Randall, or I didn't call him. I messaged Randall, and I'm like, dude, this is our situation, and this is what I would like to do. And I just told him. I just broke it down for him, told him this is what I would like to do, and he supported everything. He was like, absolutely. I think his actual response was, Dragonspine supports, because he was king at the time, and he's like, Dragonspine supports you 100%. It's a good fit for you guys, and it should have been that way to begin with.
Oh, that's
because
great.
Again, at the time, borders weren't a thing. It wasn't until like a year or two after that borders even started becoming a thing.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean the Principality. Now there were some surprised looks on members of the Principality's face when we became a principality, because at the time principalities weren't a thing that weren't a big thing, and they definitely weren't a thing in the Neverwinter Corpora. We just happened to have been friends with a lot of the movers and shakers down in Neverwinter, and we had been discussing with them and going down to the events and things like that. And so finally we said, screw it, let's just sign contracts with them and see what they say. And so we signed contracts with them, and during the BOD meeting I showed up to, and their board of directors was like, well, let's vote on it. They were like, so the incumbent king, which is Sir Bjorn, at the time he was just Bjorn, now he's Sir Bjorn, he suggested, he said, okay, well, I put forward the Principality of Mystic Glade, because we were the flagship, doing it.
Right.
And he was like, I put forth the Principality of Mystic Glade to be a principality under Neverwinter. And so they were like, okay, well, it passed with unanimously, and then they were like, well, now we need to make addendums to our Corpora. All right, well,
right.
So it became a big thing, and I mean, we stumbled a lot, and that's okay.
I mean, that's a big dice roll you took to sign a contract first and then say, hey, now let us be a principality when that didn't exist. Like, that is...
we never said that, though. That was their choice. We were just looking at the possibilities of just being parks under their banner.
Yeah, we didn't know what a principality was.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say
they
this.
didn't either, right? Like they had to make it they had to add it to their Corpora afterward.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this, and I'm sure that one of our viewers is going to fact check me here. I will not say that we were the first principality to ever exist in the game, like that actually carried the title of principality. But I will say this with a level of some level of surety. We were public enough. ESAM was a thing that was going on. We were all posting on there. That after we got principalities became a standard thing.
Yes.
Rising Winds didn't exist when we became a principality. The Principality of Rising Winds popped up after that. Tal Dagor popped up after that. I'm naming East Coast things that are around us now, but that idea of a section of parks breaking off into its own kingdom under this Principality idea may not have been invented by us, but what Shalazar started and what we were able to accomplish here definitely spread the idea that this is the way to go.
Yeah, we didn't invent it. We made it look good.
I don't know. I don't even know if we made it look good. We just
play with me. Play in the sandbox with me.
You look pretty today.
Okay, so how do we go from the Principality of Mystic Glade to the Principality of Winter's Edge? Who picked the name first off, and then?
Okay, so I was they immediately named me the Pro Tem Monarch because I'm the one that's been doing the legwork. So Sir Squeak was also there, so they named her the Pro Tem PM. Those were the only two positions that needed to be filled. So with that, I wasn't so arrogant to say that Mystic Glade should be the flagship. It just so happened that that's the park I was from. So what I did is, as Pro Tem Monarch, I said, okay, look, we're going to have a thing, and a contest is what I said. And there's going to be two contests. I'm going to, because at the time that I did woven belts, it was one of the few things that I did right when it came to ANS. And so I was like, look, we're going to have a contest for heraldry. But I did the name first because, the name always will, or the heraldry will always typically go with the name.
Right.
So I did the name first, and I said, okay, let's do the name. Whoever comes up with the best name. And so I took submissions, and then we voted on it as a group, as a principality. And it just so happens Winter's Edge won, and because it went with Neverwinter, Winter's Edge.
I was wondering, it seemed too good to be a coincidence.
Yeah, and it just so happens someone by the name of Draco from, I forget the park he was from, but up north of Knoxville, the park up there, Hawks Point.
It wasn't
Lions. It was Lionsgate. Yeah, it was Lionsgate. So he actually won the name contest, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then after that, maybe it wasn't him. Anyway, someone won the name. I forget who it was. But after that, we did the heraldry, and Sir Squeak's sister, who is Sir Moogie, actually made the heraldry for Winter's Edge, and she won the heraldry one. Oh, so that was pretty much the history of the name and the heraldry, how that came about. Because I wasn't going to be so arrogant to say that it should be named Mystic Glade. One, because Mystic Blade's a horrible name, but two,
it's not.
No,
it's not that great.
You're right. You're right. You're right. It's not bad. I'm shaking my head. The rest of you viewers can't see, but I am shaking my head. No, it is not a horrible. Yes, it is. It's a horrible name.
So I want to add one thing to the story here too. Because there was one important thing that you did when you took over. The very first thing that you did when you took over, you made an announcement over our Yahoo group, which was our means of communication at the time.
Boy, that's an old sentence now.
Yeah, right? We're dating ourselves really badly there. But you made an announcement over our Yahoo group that we were going to tentatively go by the Central Eastern Alliance until a kingdom name could be picked. And
correct.
I believe that you had done that because you did not want this to be the Mystic Glade show.
Correct.
A lot of the leaders were from Mystic Glade at the time because it was the park where it got started, and we wanted this to be more of an inclusive thing. So, I do remember you very specifically posting up there that it was at the same time like, hey, we need to pick a name for ourselves. We're going to go by this until then. The CEA, actually, thank you for correcting me on that. I actually believe the CEA was formed when I was going around actually contacting all the other parks, mainly because they can't contractually, if that's the right word, sign under our banner unless there's an actual contract signed. Right. So we just created the alliance to say, okay, all these groups are under the alliance until we find the kingdom, which we were in negotiations with Neverwinter at the time.
And then at that point, that's when everyone would sign their contracts and get them to them. So yeah, at the time it was the Central Eastern Alliance, and yeah, that would make for a bad kingdom name too, I believe.
I mean, yeah, a little bit. Were there any other runners up that were close, or any other names you like that you remember?
I
Not
don't
that
remember.
I can remember, dude. Yeah, okay, so first off, I would like to say for all you young viewers out there, Yahoo is a form of email that you could do.
See,
back
it's not
in
just
the
me
old
that
days.
does it. It's not just
When
me
there
that
was
does
a
it.
thing called email. The email's the thing that you send letters to that are fake letters. They're actually digital letters.
And
So
then
that's what
payphones
email
were,
is.
and then Blockbuster was.
Back in my
Yeah.
day, we used to write
Yeah.
letters on.
And then there's this thing called cassette tape.
I tied an onion on my belt, which was in fashion at the time. Okay.
So yeah. So anyway, there's no way I can remember that. I think at one point Sir Gillen made a website and it had a list of all of them, and I'm sure that's way gone by now. But back
it was
in the
his
day,
project
I mean,
when
it
he was
was
in school.
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds about
exactly.
right.
I mean, I would love to have all that information, but I dumbly didn't keep any of that information.
Right.
And I've been married since then twice, so things get lost.
Right.
with-
Well,
I mean, I think I might have lost those notebooks in the first marriage, the first divorce.
I mean, they're bound to
So.
go at some point anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So okay, so we're now a principality. We've picked the name. We've sort of picked our starting setup. We're now a principality under Neverwinter. What was that like? Was it because I know at one point you were actually king of Neverwinter, actually a few times, I think.
Yeah, a couple times, yeah.
Yeah. So what's that
So-
like?
Well, it was horrible as much as you could imagine. So I've got my own gripe. I've got my own gripes. Everybody had their gripes about Neverwinter.
Sure.
But when we first started, it was new. It was new and shiny, so everyone had a blast. We had tons of fun driving to events. I mean, at that time, we were all young and stupid, and we would have all been banned if the COC violations were in place.
Right.
But
That's the truth.
I digress. But no, I mean, we did. We had a lot of fun. We traveled all over the country to Amtgard, and
Right.
I mean, it was just fun. We started having our own events once we became a principality, which was also a lot of fun.
Mhm.
We had a lot of guests at our, just not to name drop, but we had Leaf and Sir Sparhawk and
Right.
Sir M Hog and stuff all come to our events. Sir Squeak obviously was a member of the principality, so she was always at our event. So, I mean, we had a lot of big names come to our events. At one point, we even hosted SKBC at our events.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was. Dame Lily from Neverwinter was the actual autocrat. I co-autocrated with her, and but the principality hosted it. So she was the autocrat, but it was up here. It was actually at the same site that we hold the symposium at every year.
Oh, okay.
So that's the site that we held our first SKBC that we did.
Yeah,
So,
if you remember, for any of the people that have been in the game for a while, if you remember the SKBC where they wrote corruption on the wall in Ketchup or something like that, and Randall photoshopped it in to make it the banner for ESAM, this
my
all
God.
happened at our SKBC, the
yeah.
one that we hosted.
I can't
I
believe they let us be a
dumbly-
kingdom.
Yeah, and I dumbly sewed up a white slough coat, because slough coats were the thing back then.
Hey, we're bringing
So
them
I-
back.
I dumbly sewed up a solid white, mind you, solid white lab coat, slough coat, for all the instructors for SKBC, and they were horrid. They were, bad, because, I'm like 2 years new to the game, and they were pretty bad. Even Sir Nocturne made like these little iron-on patches for them that had the logo for SKBC that I put on the breast of each coat, and then of course my horribly beautiful sewing job that I did on all of these slough coats. You would think that I would be an expert sewer after doing that many slough coats.
I wonder
And
if
then
one of those is still around somewhere. We got to find it.
I doubt it, because I was a Justicar. Matter of fact,
Oh,
I
right.
became a Justicar at that event, and went to a Justicar practice like 6 months later in Texas. We drove out there, me, Lexi, and Marlon, Marcosius, Sir
Is this
Marcosius.
pre-triads then?
Yes.
Yeah, this was pre-triads.
Okay.
He was a Justicar at the time, and
gotcha.
Lexi wasn't anything at the time. She was just riding because she was my squire, or my page, sorry. And so anyway, so we were traveling out there to go to fighter practice, Justicar fighter practice, and I forget his name, but he was a Justicar, and he was wearing it, and it was raggedy as hell. And I'm like, oh, it looks just like I handed it to you. So yeah, so I doubt any of them are still around, because
Right.
it looked rough. It
So-
looked rough.
I want to touch. I want to touch on something here, and this is central to. It's how big of an impact starting the Principality had. Most all of our listeners know Sir Puddin. The very first time that he ever touched a sewing machine was when we were heading out to Memphis, which you mentioned earlier. I don't remember the name of the park there, but it was at the Arts College out at Memphis. And we needed some garb done, or we were doing split pants maybe. I don't remember what we were doing, but the household that you and I had at the time, you were the head of the household, Hunters of the Wolf.
Yeah.
We were making some new garb for it. And Shalazar and I were just dog tired. And so he set Pudding down and said, make all of these. I want these to be done by morning. And so Puddin worked all through the night and finished up our slough pants, or I don't know, slough coats or split pants or whatever they were. I don't remember what they were.
I think they were just the basic tunics, actually, to be honest.
Were they just our tunics?
The split, the tabards, the
Right.
ones that were gray on one side, blue on the other,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
the hole cut in the center. I mean, really basic.
And
really, really basic.
And so we're on our way there, and he appliques the symbol on it and everything like that. We're on our way there, and we're looking it over, and the motherfucker did it perfectly. It was the first time he'd ever touched it, and it was the most beautiful piece of applique I'd ever seen in my life.
Now let me tell you about the first time he ever built a fucking weapon. I'm sorry. That's where you're supposed to beep, right?
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
you
Sorry.
tried to beep that.
Anyway,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
we'll
apologies,
move it
listeners.
in post. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
We won't.
okay.
You're going to leave it there.
Yeah. So the first time, so he's real life my cousin. Don't hold that against him. I promise. It's
I did
the
not
blood
know
runs
that.
deep. Yeah, he's my cousin in person.
A
right, in
lot
real
of stuff
life.
just started to make sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
Tiger
like I said,
Lily.
don't
Tiger Lily is
hold
also related to you guys, correct?
shut your whore mouth. Don't you tell people that.
Tiger Lily from Sylvan Glade is also related to you guys.
Yeah, that's actually his brother. That's Tiger Lily and Sir Puddin are brothers. So anyway, my family all lived in Cookville, which is where Shadowforge is.
Right.
And so what I would do is I would play Amp Guard on the weekend, and then the following weekend I would go home to visit my family. And so I'm like, at the time, I'm like balls to the wall Amp Guard. So I'm like, I need a place to play on the weekends that I'm visiting home. So what do? I call all my cousins, right? And I'm like, hey, you got to do this. And my brother and my nephews. And I'm like, guys, you guys got to come over and play this thing. So they all come to my parents' house, and I show them how to play. So I go back to Mystic Glade the next weekend. I go back home the weekend after that. And here comes Puddin with this look on his face. And he's like, check out this pole arm that I made. Because at the time I was rolling down spear and longsword, so they didn't know any better. So they were thinking, oh, it's the longer the better, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, right. So he comes up and he swings the first time we line up. He swings this long frickin' pole arm, clocks me right in the chin. I see stars. I mean, I can take a hit. I mean, I've been fighting 3 older brothers my whole life.
Right.
I can take a hit. And he about knocks my big ass out. I mean, knock the out. I mean, I'm like, no, that's going away. I mean, Bao knocked me out. This thing was a solid brick on a stick.
Did he like torque wrap the whole thing, or what was
Oh my God, I don't know what the hell he did. I'm pretty sure there was a crowbar in there. I'm pretty sure I pissed him off the weekend before or something. I'm not sure.
Good job.
I don't. Yeah, they didn't really tell me after I woke up. But yeah, I mean, no, I was like, no, let me show you how to make a weapon. And that's all it took. And the guy has surpassed so many people when it comes to his arts and sciences. And he's just, I mean, I couldn't be prouder as a knight. I got some pretty badass belt line, that's for sure.
You do, and I want to get into that later, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we formed the Principality. We are having our own events now. Now I want to step in here and say something that I had said on the last podcast. You may or may not have heard, but I feel like there was a point that we stalled out. Like we had been building toward. You mentioned earlier that it wasn't about being fast or being the first there. It was about doing it right. And so we were doing our own events. We were securing our own event sites. We had built our Kapora, or at least pieces of our Kapora. All of these things were falling in place. And you moved. And you moved down to Florida, where Neverwinter is. And
I moved for the same reason that all men do something stupid.
Woman.
Or a woman.
Yeah, lady. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you moved, and there was, and this isn't the fault of the people that were in charge at the time. This isn't the fault of the people that were movers and shakers and doing stuff and holding events at the time. It is just a fact that we ended up stalling out. There was a long time after you moved, where we were still doing the events. People loved the events. People were having a really fun time.
And the events got better.
And the events got better. Yeah. But we weren't actually progressing. The idea of kingdom wasn't really moving forward. And we had some, I'm going to call them conflicts with our parent kingdom. Maybe conflict is a bad word for it, but could we vote? Could we not vote? That sort of thing.
Yeah, let me stop you. Let me stop you
ahead.
there. So, I mean, we can point the finger at a lot of people.
Right.
I feel that when there was a time before I moved that I was ready to say F this game. I did a lot to get the kingdom the Principality off the ground, and I can't take full credit. I mean, I never did it alone ever, and that's what a lot of people need to understand too, is I always had someone riding shotgun, whether it was Sir Puddin, whether it was you, Sir Flo, whether it was Sir Gillen, whether it was, any of these guys, multiples of these guys, lots of guys that don't play anymore. Chunk, he and I made lots of trips together. There are so many people involved in helping and making this Principality and working get off the ground. The one problem that we ran into, Sir Tie-Dye was another one that always was willing to jump in the car and go.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's and I miss her a lot. Sorry, I just needed to say that. But anyway, there's just a lot of stuff that was involved. And then when you have your parent company say, "Hey, do you want your crown belt or your sword, or your crown belt or your flame belt?" And when you tell them, "Look, I'm qualified for my crown, I'm not qualified for my flame." Well, we can power level you to your flame if you want it. I'm like, no, I don't want to be power leveled.
Right.
I'm not going to be power level. I'm not for that. I'm not okay with that. And then have the parent company say, "Well, you haven't done enough to get your crown belt." And then at that point, you just throw up your hands and you go, what the hell else am I supposed to do? So there was a lot of animosity, a lot of resentment. And at that time, I was going through a divorce as well. So at that time, I just threw my hands up and I'm like, well, you can take your amp guard and shove it up your ass, Night Circle, because I could care less. To be honest, I don't need your white belt to say that I'm the guy that did this. I don't need your white belt to have people come to me with questions or call me every single day. I was getting calls every single day asking questions on how to do stuff and things like that. I don't need a white belt to do that.
Right.
People knew who to come to ask questions. And it's very arrogant of me to say that, but it was true. And I didn't need to be a knight, just like, Lexi, who also refuses to be knighted. She doesn't need to be a knight to know that she's worthy of the knighthood.
Right. She's already got the masterhood. It's a master garber.
Yeah, exactly. So viewers, if your goal is to be a knight, that's admirable. Keep that goal because it will get you where you want to be in Amtgard. But keep in mind, you don't need to be a knight to get things done or to be a leader. You just don't. You don't put up with the crap. If someone tells you you can't do it unless you're a knight, tell them screw off.
Let me ask you
There's
this.
no reason for that.
And this is a very loaded question, knowing that I'm sitting on a call with two knights. Do you think the title of knighthood is overvalued?
I think that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself.
Okay.
I think, and I'll just tell you, Subway spent the whole day with me. We literally got to the restaurant at 10:30 this morning, and we left at 6 o'clock.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so we were there we were there a long time, just BSing. I'm sure the little waiter was pissed off the whole time that we kept his table covered. But anyway, and we discussed that a lot because that's a good question. But I don't want to get off topic, and I did get off topic, and I'm sorry. But I said all that just to go with, or just to let you know that. So there was a disconnect between our parent company, which was our parent, sorry, not parent company, but our parent kingdom,
right,
which was Neverwinter, and Winter's Edge. And unfortunately, that caused a lot of strife and animosity between the two kingdoms. And then once I moved down there, it didn't change anything. I felt like I left the Principality in great hands. I feel that people like Tie-Dye and Lexi and Jeff and Flo and Kazan and Puddin and so many others. And I know this is a bad word right now, but the lanterns in general,
right?
The Green Lanterns. I mean, I left the Principality in great hands, and that's the thing. The Principality, I was never more prouder than the Principality than when I left, because they proved to me that they didn't need me. And that. I mean, what else can a father want of his children? Not that I'm so arrogant to say that you're my children. I'm just saying.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, to give an analogy. And I loved it. I thought it was awesome, but no one was getting recognized by Neverwinter. And then, one or two kings/queens, one or two monarchs from Neverwinter started giving a shit, and they started giving out awards that were rightly deserved and that recognition and stuff, but they were still not giving the awards that really needed to be given.
Right.
And then, I ran for office because I was telling them how dumb their Kapora was. I'm like, your Kapora's stupid. I mean, it's just dumb. Because at any point, I could run for office, and as long as someone's running for prime minister, I made this joke. I was in a discussion with a bunch of people down there, a couple of them being knights, and I said, your Kapora is stupid. Our Kapora is stupid. It needs to be changed. Because at any point, and they were like, well, how's it stupid? I said, well, at any point I could run for office, for king, and as long as I have a prime minister that will side with me, we could immediately make the executive decision to give Winter's Edge the right to vote in any election.
Right.
And at that point, Winter's Edge has more voting members than you guys. So you guys will never see the seat of monarchy ever again. Because it will always be a Winter's Edge king. And so when I ran for king, they flipped the fuck out. They were like, "Oh my God, Shalazar's gonna completely kill our Kapora." Well, fix it.
Right.
I mean, I'm not gonna do it, but I mean, fix it. If you don't like it, fix it.
It's the ultimate way of proving a point. Like, hey, this is a thing I've been saying for a while, and none of you are taking me seriously, so I'm gonna just, move the knife a little closer to your throat, and maybe you'll fucking do something about it.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. So things were starting to get done. And so I think, to answer the original question about the stall, I think the stall boiled down to the disconnect between the powers that be in Neverwinter, which was just a handful of people because Neverwinter was so small. And nothing against those guys. There's a lot of great people in Neverwinter. But when it came to the Principality, there was just a disconnect. It was really bad, a really bad disconnect. Because when you hear it from their point of view, which when I was down there and I heard a lot of their former monarchs talk, like Sir Stinkfoot told me when he was monarch, he put out the question, do you feel that, or send me any award recommendations? One person sent award recommendation, and we flipped out when it was given because it was sent by one of Flo's favorite people in the world, Layla, and it was sent by her for her to gain some kind of award. And when Stinkfoot was like, "Sure, it's the only one that I was given, so why not give it?" So he gave it, and then of course we flipped out because it wasn't deserving. And I'm like, you should have at least came to the monarch and asked, do you think this is deserving, or something, anything. But yeah, so there's a huge disconnect on both sides.
Yeah.
So it's not just their fault. Seeing it from both sides, it's not just their fault. Now, am I saying Winter's Edge is equal blame? No, not at all. Most of the blame came from Winter's Edge, or Neverwinter, I believe.
Right.
But there was definitely a disconnect from both sides.
Well, this is something I was kind of building to, and we've had several people on who have either interacted with Neverwinter or were part of Neverwinter or just know about Neverwinter to some capacity, and there's always the thing that gets put out of Neverwinter, Nevernights, and I don't know how much that weighed into it. But I'm not sure how much you know about the situation currently, but there is a group in Neverwinter now, as of like a week ago, that is looking to break off and become their own principality. I think it's the southern part of Florida wants to break off from Neverwinter and be their own principality and do kind of the Winter's Edge thing. And I guess the question I was building to is there's some bad blood there, and I don't know exactly what's going on, but it seems to center around awards. Do you think that's a kind of a systemic thing? Is it part of their corpora, part of their culture? I don't know how much of that you can speak to, but it seems like this is happening again for them. And I didn't know if there's some, nugget from history that we can show them to say, this is your problem.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this has been going on for a while, and at one point they were talking about doing it again, doing it as well, breaking off.
So you're saying this isn't the first time that a Southern Florida group has thought about splitting off from Neverwinter?
Correct. Yeah. They've talked about that before. Actually, there's been times where the northernmost group talked about splitting off. There's been times when the southernmost group, and what I tried to tell the southern group is why would you want to split off? That means you're the one that has to do all the work to become your own kingdom.
Right.
Let them split off so that they're the ones that's the principality. Because according to Neverwinter rules, or Kapora at the time, I don't know what it is now because I don't care what it is right now.
Right.
Nothing against them. I have my own stuff to worry about. I don't have time to worry about what Neverwinter's issues are.
If I was expected to know another kingdom's Kapora, I think I would just quit the game. I
That's
barely
fair.
know our own Kapora.
Yeah, that's fair. But the thing is the fact that their Kapora originally said that the Principality, no one in the Principality has the ability to run for office or vote in their elections. Why would you give them that power? I
Yeah.
don't know why you would break off just to give them the power to not have a say. Now if you break off from them and become the Principality and their Kapora is exactly the same, the situation becomes, now you're in the same exact situation, except now you don't even get a vote. And now
Right.
you don't even get a chance to run for office. You get nothing. Nothing. You're just there. And that's the issue that was the Principality of Winter's Edge, is that they didn't have a say in anything. They didn't have any opinion when there was a change coming to the game, the rules of the game, rules of play. They didn't have a say in it, and there was more people playing in the Principality and had voting rights in the Principality than they did in Neverwinter, and Neverwinter even refused to give them a vote in that. It was dumb. It was
This was
absolutely
when rule
ridiculous.
standardization was first coming in.
Yeah, that seems pretty short-sighted.
Yeah,
and I mean,
it was very.
It's happening again, so yeah, definitely short-sighted. I don't know the entire situation. I know it hinges around awards and also around representation, but I don't know more than that specifically.
We should have somebody on. We should talk to somebody down there and see who we should get on.
Who do we talk to, though? Like, the question is, do we talk to the current monarch of Neverwinter? Do we talk to one of the people that's pushing for the split? Both?
I would push one of each. I would have both. That way you get both sides.
Yeah.
I
Be
would talk to someone, maybe the monarch who's probably from the north is my guess, because why would the monarch want to separate? So
Right.
if I'm an outside voice or outside viewer that has no clue what's going on, but just from what you said, my guess is the monarch is from the north and the people wanting to rebel is from the south. So I would have the monarch on, hear their side of the story, and then I would have someone from the south on to hear their side of the story.
I think that's the best way to do it, and I think that's the correct. I think
Also,
that's the correct lay of it. I'm horrible with geography though, so it could be flipped.
And the other side of that is, I wouldn't post the first one until the second one is recorded. That way they can't rebut what the other person says.
Yeah, I think that would be one of those we release 2 in a week. And,
Yeah.
Wednesday, Friday, or what? Maybe both on Friday. Who cares?
Yeah.
That would be cool.
See, I'm not the guy that comes up with the ideas. I'm the guy that makes them better.
I mean,
I think there's a company that does that. I should put in an application.
Well, so where we stopped and we started talking about sort of what became of the stall there. This got fixed by you were saying, I'm not the guy that comes up with the ideas, I'm the guy that makes them better, but that's a thing for your Beltline too. Puddin was the one that really kind of kickstarted this. He may not have been the one that said we really need to get our ass in gear. I don't know who that was. I had been injured at the time and had taken a little bit of a break. But when I came back in, he was the one that was doing it. He had put together a plan. Things were written down. Things were happening, and they were happening under his leadership at the time. He was king. So I remember we were at Eastwind Castle. There was an event going on in Eastwind Castle, and he was monarch at the time, and this is the first time that I really saw things starting to come together. So Kazan played a huge part in that as well. I'll say that Pyam played a huge part in it too. I wasn't around for all of that, so I don't know who all was doing what or who started the idea first. But when I came back in, he was the one that was pushing us forward at the time and got a lot of the groundwork laid. I know that for those that were around at the time, you'll remember the region system that we had where events were being held regionally in the Kingdom of Winter's Edge. And so far as I've come to understand, Puddin was the one that really organized that.
I believe that was his idea, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. I'm sure someone will correct me if I am, but I believe that was his idea.
And
there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit with that push, for sure. That did a lot of stuff in the background that don't get the credit that they deserve, unfortunately. But unfortunately, I'm not the guy to name those people because I have no clue. But I do know that Puddin would be a good one to talk to about that.
yeah, we'll have to reach out to him. But so he does that. He sets up this regional idea so that we can have larger events. We start having events that reach the number of people that we are required to have at a single event, a single place, butts and seats, to take to clan and get approved as a kingdom. We go the first year and we miss it by
that much.
Yeah, I want to say that you needed 75 and we had 73 point something.
Oh.
And we couldn't pass we failed the vote with that.
Yeah.
But so this isn't, I wanted to circle back around to Puddin there because you mentioned your belt line earlier, and it's not just you. I mean, you have done what I think is the job of every single knight in the game, which is to pass on the things that you have learned. I know that I have told you and other people over the years that almost everything that I needed to know about leadership and politics, I learned from you. That includes most of the bad stuff.
Hey,
but
what bad stuff?
So sometimes
it's all good.
Sometimes what I learned was what not to do. But but talk to me about your belt line. Who all is in your belt line? What criteria do you look for when you are trying to decide who to bring in under you and who to teach?
So, wow, I got goosebumps right now.
Uh-oh.
So probably one of my best friends in the world. I will just start at the beginning. So I was brought up by Patty, Sir AMC. I was her page, and then she promoted me to man-at-arms and then squire. And so she's the only one that I knew as a master. And there's probably only a few people in this game that I would probably take a belt from. Sir Bjorn would have been one of them. Sir Sparhawk would have been another. And there's probably only one or two more. But I've learned a lot from. I try to take a little from everybody, like things that people do. If I think that it would go along with my style of teaching, my style of mentoring, then I'll steal it. I have no qualms with it. So when it comes to taking belt lines, at one point I had a lot of people under my belt line. And mostly it was because, like, at one point, Blondie was a member of my belt line. And it was because he came to me and asked me. And I'm like, of course. I mean, I liked Blondie. He was a good friend of mine, and he wanted to learn from me. And I'm willing to help anyone that asks. And then he asked to be a part of the belt line, and I said, sure. So at one point, it started getting to the point where there was just too many people in my belt line. And unfortunately, a lot of people weren't getting the notification or the one-on-one attention that I should have been giving them. So it basically boiled down to like two people left. So it started with Lexi. I took Lexi as a page way back in the day. The only thing she really cared about Amtgard was fighting. So that's what I worked with her on. Soon as she got to the point where there was nothing else that I could teach her, because once I took her as an underling, I read lots of books on female fighting. I took classes at SKBC on female fighting. I did everything I could to increase my abilities to teach her so that I could teach her. And once she got to that point where there was nothing else that I could teach her, I looked for someone else to take her that could move her further in the arts. She actually decided to go a different route and take someone that could help her in the arts and sciences, which is awesome too, because she's a fantastic artisan.
Immensely talented, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, she already had the triads. So I was originally I was looking at Sir Stinkfoot or even Sir Goldwyn to take her to help her in the fighting. But I also knew Sir Stinkfoot could help her in arts and sciences as well. So
Right.
Stinkfoot would have been a great teacher for her. But to be honest, Venus wasn't a horrible choice for her either, because she's a fantastic artisan.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen. She's working on a tunic for someone's knighting, and I won't say who because that could ruin the surprise. And the prototype that she's
I
got.
wonder.
There's 4 knightings coming up. Okay, could be any one of them.
Right. You're right. My bad.
She's making a tunic for it.
So now when those other 3 don't get a tunic from Lexi, they're gonna be like, "God damn it, I'm so disappointed."
Yeah, Lexi picked a favorite. I don't think she'd even like deny that. She would just say, "Yeah, I don't like you."
Bat an eye at it.
Yeah,
right?
that's fair. That's fair. That's totally my Lexi. Yeah, and now you know why she was in my belt line.
Yeah, I could see you two getting along great.
So I took her as a page, and then I took Puddin as a page for a little bit, and he was only in the game for a little bit before he took a hiatus because it was really hard. I mean, this guy, dude, I'm telling you, man, when I say that I've had some stellar folks in my belt line, I mean, this guy would send messages, because back then there wasn't a Facebook. He would send like chat messages to random people at school saying, "Hey, I'm doing this thing called Amtgard," and like break it down for them in a private message.
That's
like
cool.
randomly. That's how he would build up the numbers at his park. And we live in a college town. Like, Cookeville is a college town, so the guy worked his ass off. For being a quiet guy, he worked his ass off trying to get that park built up.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a great job. I mean, at one point it was making barony, almost Dutchy numbers.
I remember when it was accused of being a paper shire.
Oh yeah. That was when
Story for another
Shalazar.
time.
Real quick for people, classic clip. What is a paper shire?
Paper shire was a concept back in the day. I guess it still exists. That this isn't a real park. Like, the 3 of us on this conversation have the Shire of
Mystic Glade.
Well, yeah, at this point.
I mean,
because Mystic Glade isn't a park anymore, right? It's inactive. So yeah, we say, "Oh, we've started up Mystic Glade," and we say, "Oh yeah, we met that week and did that thing and had a fighter practice."
So you are a shire that exists only on paper.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I was being accused of one of our splinter parks, actually, tried to tell Sir Nocturne, who was the king of Neverwinter at the time, that one of our parks in the Principality didn't actually exist. And the reason they accused that, because Shalazar was telling everyone about his family pretty much made up the whole park at Shadowforge, because it was my brother, my nephews, my cousins, because I wanted a place to fight. So I got all my family together to start building the park, and then Puddin decided to go the extra mile and start private messaging people to get people to come out.
This is like 15, 16 people that was almost just his family.
Yeah, there was quite a few that were just my family. So because they were my family, they took it as they weren't really there. I was just writing names of my family down to make it seem like there was an actual shire there with 15 or 16 people per day. So they thought it was a fake shire just to boister our numbers.
Okay, that's what I was going to try to get to, is like, what's the advantage? But boistering our numbers, that makes sense.
Yeah, making the Principality look bigger than it actually was by 15, 20 people in a shire that doesn't really exist.
Okay.
Puddin would disagree that it didn't really exist. He worked his ass off for that shire.
I mean, I have been there. There are pictures of us doing events down there.
We used to.
Uh-huh.
So every single to help them out, me and because Shalazar was usually already there. He's visiting his family, right? Me and Sir Gillen would hop in my cruddy little Toyota Echo and pick up some cigars and drive down there every single weekend. We were there. I don't know how long we did that. It has to have been a couple of years. Beautiful park they had. First time that I was introduced to disc golf actually was there. But we would go visit them just because, you had Mystic Glade here, right? And Mystic Glade is this awesome thing with a lot of people that are well-known fighters now, but even back then, very high-end fighters. But this gave a new perspective. This was brand new people. They still, the bright shiny hadn't worn off. They were just learning about battle games. We always had fun there. We went back because it was that new Amtgard experience that you can't get that anywhere else. That fades as a park gets older and a little bit more experienced. But
jaded is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, jaded. But yeah, it was some of my best memories were us hopping in the car with whoever else wanted to go that week and driving down there to visit and getting to see you, Shalazar, and Puddin and Tiger Lily and Matt. Did Matt have a name? Is Matt?
Yeah.
It was one of those weird Amtgard names like Shadow Banana or I don't know.
Yeah.
Shadow Banana.
Lich Lord Super Muff or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is what is Hosher sign in as sometimes? It's something like Lunchbox Tank something. Every time I was a PM and had to enter his credits, I wanted to scream.
It's Lunchbox McTank Webdick. And there's a story behind that we'll tell off hours.
Language, man. We're on a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, we were talking about your belt line and specifically about some of the work that Puddin had come in there, and I know that was a huge aside, but I wanted to tell that fun and kind of funny story there.
Yeah. I mean, he's just he's gone out of his way to build that, to have just some yahoo who just didn't like Shalazar, which I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with the fact that you don't like Shalazar. But don't take away all the hard work that those guys are doing over there in that group just to make yourself feel better about yourself. I mean, whatever. Right. So anyway, so Puddin was my, but I will tell you the story on how he got his name, because that's fun. So we were at a Neverwinter event, and we all go. We're all there, and it's Puddin's first event, and everybody called him Barry at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And and I told him, I was like, you're going to do something stupid at this event to get your Amtgard name. Because I always told them, I was like, there's two ways to get a name. Either you pick it or someone picks it for you. So, of course, everybody's like, oh, well, I'm going to be Lich McDickface or whatever, whatever the stupid, goofy thing that they come up with. Like Shalazar, who comes up with that bullshit? Anyway, so we all go. We all get up early, because we're all noobs and we're like all excited, nipples rock hard because we're about to go and fight.
Right.
And we all go in there to the cafeteria, and we're like, oh, breakfast. So we all eat breakfast, and here comes Puddin, and he's got this big bowl of pudding, and he's sitting there eating it, and we're just BSing around the table, and it's like, look at it. Wait a minute, dude. That's not pudding. That's honey butter. He sat there and ate a whole bowl of honey butter, hence the name HB Puddin.
And the best thing is after he was told, it's like, hey man, I don't think that's pudding. I think that's honey butter. He looked down at it and looked back up to us and grabbed his spoon back up.
Bowl.
Yeah. He was still good.
Yeah, yeah. He felt so sick afterward. It was fantastic.
I was gonna say,
I mean,
God.
it was great. He almost died and everything. It was fun for the whole family.
Yeah, shit.
So yeah, but that was pretty funny. So that's how he got his Amp Guard name, HB Pudding. And then Tiger Lily, he got his name because he's a dumbass and thought he could beat someone who named him Tiger Lily because it was just funny. Yeah, it was emasculating. So
Shalazar actually named me as well. Flo came from Shalazar.
I did.
I had an Imp Guard name before that none will ever know.
No. You gotta tell us what it was.
No, you don't get to know now.
Oh, come on.
Shalazar, I think, might
how
remember
flirby
what
was it?
It was pretty flirby.
I do not remember.
Oh, come on, man.
It is pretty flirby. No, you don't get to know now. But what's important is
if we know all of your names, we can summon you. Is that how it works?
It is.
Ah, piss.
I'll be summoned like Bahamut. But no, I had an Amp Guard name, and Shalazar was making fun of me because the name was so. It was just as flirby as you think that it is, and based on some other things that were happening in our local. And now you know.
God, just tell it. Yeah, just tell it.
No. There, on your Amped Wiki page, there is a quote, and it's at the very top, and it says, "Wolf, you're full of shit." So I'm assuming it's the opposite of Wolf.
Yeah, it was. I started out, and I had a falling out with the guys at Mystic Glade. I was going through a breakup that was like my high school sweetheart breakup, and so I was not in a great place.
What was his name? His name was like Frank or something, wasn't it? Your high school sweetheart?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, I was just checking.
He was sewn
seemed
together.
Like a nice guy.
He was sewn together, and we were the same height.
Yeah,
you don't want someone shorter than you. And the so
Slim Pickens there, bud.
Yeah, I know, right? It's me and Chuck. It's just that's it. But no, so I started going out to the other group, the Splinter group here in Knoxville, and the person that was there that was named Wolf, and some things that happened there led me to leave because I wasn't super comfortable with what was going on, mostly because it was creepy as shit and illegal. And so I came back to Mystic Glade, and I talked to the people that were running the park there, and we made up, as not even 20 yet.
You're skipping like the first part of that.
Fill in the gaps, please.
Well, let me finish.
You're skipping. No. We need to back up and tell the first part of that.
I like the way Shalazar does stories.
He comes to Mystic Glade. This is even before I even started Amp Guard. He comes to Mystic Glade, and they all go to whatever that place is that Beefy used to work. It was a theater.
It was a movie theater in a town that is about an hour or so away from Knoxville. The name doesn't matter. Because I don't remember what it is. But
so Beefy was a manager. Beefy and his now wife were managers at the time. And so what they would do, or Beefy was the manager, she was just a worker there. And anyway, we would go there on the weekends, and we would fight. And once it closes and everybody goes home, they would shut everything down, and he would let us in the back door, and we would fight at the bottom of the theater, right below the
that big open area
screen. The in between the seats and the screen. And so we would fight there. The women and me would go into the other place and watch a movie, that kind of thing, silly stuff.
Yeah.
So, because, why be around a bunch of smelly guys when I can be around a bunch of good-smelling women?
Right.
So, Shalazar, I don't know if you guys met me. So, anyway, before I even started, Flo decided he was going to go on one of these field trips with Mystic Glade to this location.
It was actually, I hadn't even had my first day of Amp Guard, and I got invited up to go do this, and I said yes. And
they actually liked Flo. This was something that they do to people they like.
Yeah.
They actually hazed him by taking him and taping him to a tree outside. And he got so upset that he left and went and joined Wolf's group. And with that, I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, just to kind of fill in a little bit there. So to set the mood here, I had just turned 18, and was just joining college. My birthday's in October, so just now hit 18, and I decided to hop in the car. Actually, I don't even think I was 18 at the time. I decided to hop in a van with 6 dudes that I didn't know to go fight somewhere. Fight club style. Cell phones didn't exist at this time, right? So I hop on in the van. We go to an area that I had never been to before. That's about an hour from home, to a theater that we were getting into the back of, right? So nobody knew that we were there. And then it seems like everything's going great and we're all laughing and having a good time. And a couple of hours after that, they have if for those people that don't know what like chicken winging someone is, it's where you, like, if you were to bend your arm at the elbow and put it up close to your body and then duct tape it together and then duct tape that to your body on both sides and then do the same thing to your legs. That's what chicken. So they chicken wing me up and so I'm thinking, I was like, okay, like there's 5 or 6 of them there. Like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like this is how people get killed.
I've seen movies.
Yeah. I'm going to be on Unsolved Mysteries or something like that.
Yeah.
This was fun hazing. This was how,
Fun being a relative term.
Yeah. This is how Mystic Glade did stuff at the time. And I was actually told later by Beefy that I was one of the last people that they did this to, because the way that they looked at it was, this is like a fun thing that we can do with people that, it will really get to know them, and we all have the same kind of humor, so they'll have the same kind of humor as well. And this is one of those things where you do something dumb when you're growing up and you're like, oh wait, everyone doesn't have my same sense of humor.
Right.
And this was really dumb, and I could totally see how this could kind of be like a kind of a
crime
scary
or something,
So yeah, that was, I did skip over the slightly illegal things that that a lot of my friends did when I was younger. But yeah, so all of that happens, and I decide to leave Mystic Glade, and I think that I had been out once, maybe twice at this point. So I said earlier that this was before my first day, but I don't think that's correct, because I think I'd been out once or twice. I go over to the other group in Knoxville. I remember actually like bringing backup with me. I walked back because you had to get a paper record.
This other group was Sleeping Dragon, right?
It was, yes,
Okay,
Sleeping Dragon. And you had to get a paper copy of your record at that point. So because I was
Like your
close
fucking
to
shot records, or
I was close to being a second level warrior.
Ooh.
I wasn't gonna have that taken away from me. So I remember with backup heading out to the park and be like, hey, trying to be cool, I need a copy of my records. I'm leaving. So I go over to Sleeping Dragon. I'm
sure you looked really cool doing it too.
Oh, yeah.
In my clan member garb that I had.
Oh God, that was fantastic.
Yeah, I had a huge white sheet that I wore, basically. It's just missing the hood.
As a healer.
Yeah, as a healer. So the I go over to Sleeping Dragon. I'm over there for a little bit, and while I'm doing this, I'm going through my first semester of college. Wasn't this supposed to be an interview with Shalazar?
It was, but he had to take a step back for a second. So.
Yeah. So
I had to pee. Old man bladder.
Yeah.
Oh, we can do that. Just let Flo talk and go pee.
Yeah, it's a thing.
I do that all the time.
He is actually getting up, y'all. He is.
Leave me alone.
Yep. So I go over to Sleeping Dragon. I'm hanging out there, and I'm going through my first semester of college, and I'm having some time to unwind from the crushing thing that happened in my life. I lost the only person I'll ever love, and blah 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 blah. All of those feelings that you have when you lose your first big crush. And I started thinking to myself, I overreacted to this situation. Like, it was bad. I still to this day, like, you don't do that to people, but the way that they weren't trying to. Nobody was punching me. Nobody was doing these other things. Everybody was laughing, have a good time, and
Well, everyone but you.
everyone but me, yeah. And the other group was doing some things. The other person that was leading it was doing some things that I just didn't.
I mean,
care
don't
for.
beat around the bush or anything.
Yeah.
The other guy that we're not going to name Wolf
Yeah.
was doing some bad stuff.
Yeah. So that I wasn't okay with a lot of the stuff that was going on there, and so I decided that I'm going to go back over to Mystic Glade. So I have to get my paper records again. This is like the second time that I've gone through and done this thing, and I remember I remember Shalazar having a conversation with me years later, where he's telling my first day back out from his perspective, and so from and I'll let you chime in here because I think you do this a little better than I do. But he was like, you came back out and we thought you were a spy. I don't for anyone that's ever been in a town where a group has splintered off and the group members that splintered off used to be a part of your main group. There's some animosity there for whatever reason. The idea was that one person
and it's like loyalty too. It's like, oh well, I started at this group, so I automatically have to hate your group.
Yeah, that's right.
So screw your group.
That's right. And so I go out and there's this idea that I'm some kind of spy from the other group that is collecting information to take back to the mothership or whatever. And so
I think you got it right.
Yeah, so Shalazar, he's telling me this story years after the fact when he and I are good friends at this point. I think I was actually over at your house at the time, and I was like, you thought I was a spy? That's amazing. So, what convinced you that I wasn't? And he said, with a straight face, in that Shalazar tone of voice that he gets, he's like, oh, you were way too stupid to be a spy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But yeah, so that was my triumphant return to Mystic Glade a couple of months after I left, I think.
So he tells you that whole story just to tell you that because we thought he was a spy and he was trying to tell us, no, I don't like this guy. I don't like him. He's a dick and I don't trust him and blah, 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 and this and this and this. Okay. All right. Well, your new Amp Guard name is Flo. What? Yeah, it's Flo. What? Why? Because it's Wolf backwards.
Yeah.
And then the first time that Wolf hears us call him Flo, he's like, Flo, why do they call you Flo? And Flo, with a straight face, looks at him and throws a shot at his shoulder. And he says, it's because of the way I flow the weapon when I throw it.
Fuck off.
Yeah, because we did still interact with this park. After that, there was a point later on in this story where both of these groups are at the exact same park. They're at the exact same physical location, Carl Cowan Park.
Yeah, because I think originally it was supposed to be Enieb Flow, right?
Yeah, it was.
It was supposed to be completely Wolfbane, completely backwards, Enieb Flow. Yeah.
Yeah, but that last part was we dropped, and it's also we mentioned House Hunters of the Wolf earlier, but that was actually Shalazar forming the house. It was
gonna ask.
It was the antithesis of like we don't be that guy. Like if we had a motto or a mission statement, it was don't be that guy.
Nobody wants to be that guy.
Yeah. So yeah, that was where I got my name from. I'm glad I was able to share that on Shalazar's podcast.
Well, so Shalazar, did you pick the name Shalazar or did somebody call you that?
I did. When that first day talking to Sir Gillen about how Amtgard works, and he gave me the same speech that I gave everybody else. You either pick your name or you get it chose for you. So, like the nerd that all of us are, I went home to my handy-dandy little notebook that I have on my bookshelf, and I pull it down. That has all these, it's a three-ring binder that has these character sheets throughout the whole thing, and has all the characters that I play. that I've ever played in any RPG.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking through and I'm like, okay, let me see if any of these names stand out to me. And it just so happens by no coincidence, Shalazar happened to be the name of a were-tiger I was allowed to play by a crazy-ass GM to allow me to play a fucking were-tiger. A female were-tiger. So I took the name Shalazar because I really like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me look at the last names. And Bastion just so happened to be the name of a Sith that someone allowed me to play in their Star Wars campaign.
Right.
A Jedi Sith. So, yeah, a Dark Jedi. So that's where I came up with Shalazar Bastion. And then, of course, from there, I also heard that Shalazar was the name of a demon in the Book of Necronomicons, and I'm like, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it flies.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. So, I mean, I've just been role-playing an asshole this whole time.
Right.
You do it very
I'm
well,
really
sir.
a sweet guy.
Yeah, you do it. You do it
I
very
mean,
well.
I generally believe that to be true, regardless of the sarcasm. But so I wanted to get back into Beltline a little bit because I know Subway now is a part of your Beltline.
But
yeah,
his brother used to be. I see. We're looking at your Amped Wiki now, and it says PBD used to be in your Beltline as well.
Yeah, PBD used to be part of my Beltline. He actually dropped Amtgard for the longest time, and he came back, and I'm like, oh, cool, are you actually coming back? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, good, I want to give you a belt. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, I was wanting to do that before you dropped the first time, but yeah, I told Jay that I would throw you a belt if you kept playing, and he was like, damn it, had that happened, I would have stayed in the game. And I'm like, I'm gonna hit Jay in the nuts so hard.
Jay being Subway.
Jay
Yeah.
being Subway, sorry. And so turns out, he stayed in the game like a month and then stopped playing again.
So I want to pause again because I got to share another great story from somebody in your belted line here.
Thank God I gotta pee again.
Yeah, no, PBD has one of my favorite violence reactions to Zeb fucking with people, to Gillen, Sir Gillen fucking with people that I've ever seen. So we were, you may not know it to look at us now, but we were huge into battle gaming. This is when 7.0 or maybe 7.5 or whatever they called it.
7.0, the 7 edition rule set lasted forever.
It did. Yeah, it did. But so it's going on at this time, and we play so much that our group is like any of the other groups out there where we know all of the loopholes, we know all of everything, we're practicing up for events and seeing what rules they have chosen to enforce or not enforce, because the Interkingdom Rules Committee wasn't really a thing at this time. So every single event would post up what you are and are not allowed to cheat, basically, right? And so we're getting ready, and Sir Gillen is a great archer. I mean, he doesn't do archery much anymore. You wouldn't know it, but all of his underbeltlings do. Gun's a great archer. Patches is a great archer, and they learn from him. He's one of the best that I've ever seen do it. And we broke an arrow because we were all poor, and we couldn't afford the really, really nice fiberglass arrows or anything. So we got the really cheap arrows from Walmart, the aluminum shaft arrows.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had stepped. This is the bad thing. The good thing about the arrows like that is they're cheap, so you can buy a lot of them.
Yeah, but they bend.
Yeah, somebody accidentally steps on them, which is bound to happen.
Yeah.
Then it gets bent up and the arrow's useless. And in this case, I don't remember how, but it got stepped on and it actually broke in half. So we had two different halves of the arrow. And Zeb's fucking with PBD, Subway's brother. He's tapping him in the leg with one half of the arrow, and PBD. We're sitting here resting in the shade because it's summertime. It's just hot as hell outside. And he's like, okay, yeah, I appreciate it, man. Whatever, you can stop. And Zeb's like, yeah. And we continue bullshitting and talking about whatever we were doing. And Zeb starts it up again. He's tapping him in the leg. He's flipping his hair. He's doing whatever with. He's poking it in the side
because he's really pretty.
Yeah. And So this happens a couple of times with PBD every single time going, hey man, you need to stop. You need to stop. And this last time he's like, you need to stop or I'm going to take that, I'm going to snatch that arrow out of your hand and I'm going to drive as deep as I can into your shoulder. And so, whatever, this is going to be great. And he goes to poke again and I see a light. I see a switch flip in PBD's eyes. So this is why I forever said after that if we got into an actual fight, he needs to go down first because he plays by no rules when that happens.
That's my belt line.
The arrow made it halfway to him. He snatched it out of Gillen's hands, took it up, and then straight down into his shoulder. And I mean, it in my memory, it just wobbled there. Whoa, 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 whoa. And he.
Yeah, I'm sure in your memory it looked way cooler than it actually was.
Gillen looks over, and I'm going to back the mic up here. He looks over and he's like, ah! Because this thing is just sticky. He jerks it out, and there's aluminum shards everywhere. There's a hole straight through his nice new tunic that he just now made. He's bleeding, and Josh, PBD, just calmly sets the arrow back down and goes on about his conversation like nothing had happened. He's a great guy. He's also very, very dangerous.
Capable of incredible violence.
Yeah, that's right. And I see B is in your belted line as well.
Yeah, he was. B was in a situation where he was wanting to get representation in Neverwinter, and at the time, he and I actually had a falling out. There was a lot of miscommunication between the two of us. It was during that time when I wasn't playing much because I had just told the Night Circle to go screw themselves. I was still Squire under Sir AMC.
Right.
And he and I had some words over an argument. But I'm a firm believer that you can disagree with someone and still not be a dick. Right. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that. I don't always practice that, but I'm a firm believer.
Believe it, yeah.
So he and I sat down, and I told him, I was like, look, you're wanting representation, and he was under someone else. I forget who he was under. I don't remember. I think he was under... I don't even want to guess. I absolutely forget who he was under.
It's safe to say it was someone else.
Yeah, and I told him, I was like, look, just drop that belt, be my man-at-arms, take my man-at-arms belt, and I'll champion you. Because he was getting to that point where he was getting close to a belt. Excuse me one second.
Yeah, he was, for those that don't know the B.
Sorry about that.
He moved up here from Texas. We called him the B because he was the very first person we ever met that had a title of nobility. He was a baron.
Yeah, Baron Andrew McGillicuddy.
Yeah.
McGillicuddy?
I don't know. But
yeah, sounds like a fake cop name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it got shortened. We hated his normal name. It got shortened down to just the B or the Baron.
Beady.
Yeah.
So he and I discussed it. One thing that I've always told my belt line, I don't want you to be sheep. I don't say, and B had to realize this. When he took my belt, he was afraid to actually come to me with questions. Especially when he was in office, when he was dealing with Pyam and other people that were problem children for him. Right. He would be afraid to come to me and ask me my opinion on it. And finally someone said, hey, look, B keeps coming to me about these questions. You're his knight, take care of, or you're his master, take care of it. So I go to him and I ask him, I'm like, why haven't you come to me with any of these questions? He's like, because I'm afraid that you'll get mad if I don't do what you suggest. I'm like, what the are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to suggest it. I'm going to make a suggestion, and then you are a grown-ass adult, make the decision. I'm not always going to be right. I am, but you may not think that I'm always right. So you're going to have to make that decision on whether or not you want to go with my suggestion or whatever you come up with on your own. I'm not going to be mad at you whether you do or not. Pudding and I disagreed on lots of stuff.
Right.
I gave him my opinion on the way I would handle it, and then I let him do it the way he wanted to do it. Kelbo and I disagreed on a little. We agreed on a lot more than we disagreed on, me and Kelbo.
Right.
But again, I would give him my opinion on stuff, and then we would move on. He would make the decision and move on.
Yeah.
That's the way I run my Beltline. It's not a dictatorship. I'm not there to tell you what to do. I'm there to guide you and lead you in a direction, but you're the one that has to actually make the final decision. This is on you. You're the one in the spotlight, not me. So it's my job to get you to where you need to be, and it does you no good whatsoever if I'm making the decisions for you.
Right. I mean, it is frustrating to give someone, good advice and watch them not take it. Like, that is genuinely frustrating, but I think it's even more frustrating to not take the advice, fuck up, and then have the person come back to you and say, see, I told you so. Like, it's a double-edged sword, but
I had
not really at all, because one, you're not, as the master, you're not always going to be right.
Yeah.
You're just not. And sometimes the suggestions you make, or you're not always working with 100% of the information as well. So when someone comes to you and asks for your advice, you're only working with the information that person gave you. You're not working with all the information that they have, or even both sides of the story.
Right.
So you can only give them advice based on the information they gave you. So you're not always going to be right. And it's not because you're wrong. It's just because you're not working with all the information. So what they decide is still on them. And if they fail and they don't take your advice, then you can say, okay, well, what did you learn from this? And the important part is to always make sure you ask them, what did you learn? Whether they failed or achieved something or succeeded in something, you always ask them what they learned. That way they know this is what I learned. This is what we can do. Also, speaking of which, that reminds me of what we did as Mystic Glade when we went to events when we first started out. And we got away from this because we thought we were too big for our britches.
Huh.
So for all you new players out there that go to events, on the way home, of course, we were in a 15-passenger van, the Flow van.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot easier to do it. But if there was a situation where we were in multiple cars, then we would just do it at the park the next weekend. We would always, on the way home, talk about what we learned at the event.
Yeah.
So we would always, go one person at a time and say, what did you learn at this event? And some people would have one thing, some people would have multiple things. And sometimes it would be a shot, how to throw a certain shot, how to throw a certain block, how to run an event, how to run gate, how to do this, how to do that. It didn't matter what you learned as long as you say it. Because here's the thing, if you learned one thing and you've got a group of 15 at your park, and you come back and they say, and you guys sit there as a group and say, what did you learn? That's 15 individuals' information that they learned. Now all 15 know 15 different things.
Right.
Because every single person's going to learn something different at that event. And now you bring it back, and now everybody at your park learns that one thing that you learned, and now your park grows. And then your park keeps growing. Not only that, but it incentives, it's incentive for the people at your park to go to these events. Hey, these guys are learning cool things. I want some of that. I want to get in on that.
I actually really love the idea of thinking of your park's growth in more than one dimension, because when we think of growing a park, we think about getting more members, but you're saying growth here is in the value that these players provide, or that the knowledge that they have grows, and that does grow the park.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah. I specifically remember doing things like, Shalazar would say, I learn, Sir Sparhawk was at this event, and I watched him throw this shot, and then I went over and talked to him about it, and he showed me how to do it. And then he would kind of sit down with people and show people how to throw that shot. And I'm using Shalazar as an example because he's on the line with us right now, but that would be anyone. That would be anyone that was in the...
Sir Gillen was really good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also discussed, this was something that you said that I just wanted to circle back around to. It wasn't just the good things we discussed. We discussed things that we saw that we definitely didn't like too.
True.
And
you can learn just as much from that as well.
You really can. I think that is what started to shift our culture away from what I'm going to call the kind of high schoolish culture that we had, because we saw people that were doing some of the things that we were doing, and we were starting to get older now too, but we saw some people that were doing it, and you see that from the outside, and you go, maybe this isn't
man,
funny.
Come on, we were elitist pricks back then.
We were.
I mean, we were absolutely elitist pricks back then.
We were,
and for some parts, we still are. In some cases, the problem is,
I think
if I could go back,
get rid of that though.
To a point. I think if I was telling Subway this earlier, I think if my current self could go back and talk to my younger self, and give them any kind of advice, my advice would be patience. Have more patience with the outlying groups, because a lot of times we would roll up on some of these groups and we would just tell them, look, you're doing it wrong. We would arrogantly, cocky, douchebag elitists, and we would just roll up and say, look, you're doing it wrong. And then we would beat their ass with foam sticks, of course. We would
we made the battle game not fun for them. We made the ditch not fun for them.
And it's not. It wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. I will stand here on this podcast and say I'm sorry to Sleeping Dragon. I'm sorry to Radiant Valley. I'm sorry to all the surrounding groups that we did this as a whole too, because we shouldn't have. We were dicks, and unfortunately I think Amtgard suffered because of it.
Yeah.
I think we did eventually grow out of that once we started, because that's the thing. We were going to all these kingdoms throughout the country, clans and SKBCs and different kingdom Goldenville events, Neverwinter events, Texas events, and we're Rising Wind event. We were going to all these events and bringing home all this knowledge, and we were elitist pricks about it. And I was just as guilty as everyone else. And we needed to grow out of that, and eventually I think we did, for the most part. I think, and I think that, but I think in the long run, it took me. I will take myself into this context. It took me quite a while to get to the point where I realized it wasn't about me. It was about the everyone else. It was about everyone else's fun. And when you're dealing with new players, and you're dealing with players that aren't as knowledgeable or aren't as skilled in cases of Sir Gillen and things like that, and it's just you've got to handle them differently than what we did. And yeah. I commend everyone in the Principality for being better at that than we were when we first started. Sir, just a head nod to Sir Gillen. Sir Gillen was very, very good at not going 100% when fighting in ditches and fighing in. Now, if you pissed him off, he would go 100%.
Right. Yeah.
But for the most part, he doesn't. He never did. He didn't back then. He would only fight at 50% of his effectiveness, because I think he understood the fact that it was not fun to just come out and just get your ass handed to you 24/7 the whole time you're at the park. It doesn't bring people back. It took us a while to figure out that battle games is what brings people back. Ditching 24/7 kills a park, Mystic Glade.
Yep.
So yeah, it took a long time to figure these things out. there's a lot of things that people do that back then that really hurt the game. There's a lot of things that we did that was good for the game, but I don't know if it was worth it in the long run, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was. This is I said this a little earlier, kind of jokingly, but this was one of the things where I say that a lot of the things that I learned about politics and how to handle people, I learned from you, the good and the bad. This was many, many conversations over the years that you and I have had, and with other people as well, where we were. You have to be a little bit meta, and look back at yourself and say, what could I have done differently? And yeah, I agree with you. I think that was something that we definitely did not handle well. I think everybody, all of the old Mystic Glade members, have over the years acknowledged that we weren't the greatest people, especially when we were dealing with newer people. I mean, even you, Cabbage, you were one of our young members that came out that we weren't exactly great to.
Didn't I stab you in the dick your first day out?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, just making sure that was you and not some other random flurb. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's because you've told that story so many times that is the only reason why I know that it was you.
Yeah. Well, no, it's okay. Gillen actually did you one better. He uppercut me in the junk so hard I threw up, and he felt so guilty he bought me Waffle House later.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, this kind of goes back to the early Amtgard hazing. Like, that was still very much a thing, and it was kind of just accepted as that at the time. I think people don't take it the same way nowadays, but I took it the way it was kind of intended.
You'd be banned for that shit these days. It'd be like, oh, you touched him in his no-no place, his
right?
no-no square.
I took that the way it was meant to be intended. Like, oh, these guys are buddies. Like, yeah, they if they didn't like me, they would just ignore me. Yeah, and that's genuinely a thing. I think maybe doesn't exist as much anymore, but like,
yeah, they're afraid to. They're afraid to, man. It's
you can be like, oh, that guy's really mean, but you'll know that guy doesn't like you when he stops talking to you entirely, because that means he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah,
and everything up until that point, there is some degree of care. I don't think that's 100% the case with every person, but with a lot of people back then, and certainly with some people.
Oh, it was yeah,
yeah,
because back then, I mean, we had weapons that were just not friendly, and I mean, I remember the first weapon that Sir Gillen ever made for me, which was this stupid, nasty, gross flail.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was disgusting.
What was it called when you'd put a penny in the cover?
Dangerous. That's what it was.
Yeah,
called.
no shit. But it had a name. I can't remember what it was.
I remember this flail as well, and I remember it because anyone
Michael, poor little Michael.
Anyone who does weapon construction is going to immediately realize the problem with this. The head of it was a Nerf ball, which
no, it was a splash ball.
Oh, a splash ball, and so anyone of course is going to see a lot of problems with weight problems and things like that. But the big one here is that 80% of the time it'll probably be fine, but when it rains, it's of course going to weigh 1 billion pounds, and you could knock someone's
and it's
going to
leave a welt on someone.
Yeah,
and it did leave welts on someone.
Yeah,
but in all fairness, it's somewhere gone now. It's in the woods somewhere where.
Yeah, it exploded. He hit someone. Shalazar hit a child. So hard with this.
You make it sound so bad when you say it that way.
That the tip exploded and the
ball was never found ever again.
Yeah, we don't know where it went.
In all fairness, okay, so I was rolling up with Flo. Flo was a healer, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I was rolling as a barbarian, and this poor little kid who's a warrior was standing there guarding the base. And of course we roll up, me and Flo entangles him. First thing, it hits him in the chest, it falls to the ground, he looks down and sees it, and then runs over and kills Flo. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, okay.
And so, I just hit him like 15 times with that flail, to the point that it like literally burst the head and the ball flew into the woods. We were not in the woods, by the way.
Yeah, we weren't.
The ball, you mean the evidence flew into the woods?
That's right. He never came back out. That kid never came back out.
You make it sound so bad when you say
You
it
should have just
that
took the
way.
entangle. I mean, no.
I mean,
Getting back to the elitism part, though, anytime you have a community centered around a game, which if we boil it down to its most essential terms, that's kind of what
a
Amthgard is.
competition, a very competitive game.
You will always get people who are elitist pricks. You can look at any game and see that it's going to happen. I think the unique thing that Amthgard has that maybe other games don't is we move a little bit slower. And that is distinctly owing to the fact that we're not an online game, COVID things notwithstanding. But we move a little bit slower, so we have more time to be introspective and see, like, hey, that actually wasn't fucking cool. Maybe I should go back and say something.
Yeah, and I mean, so here's the other part of the problem, too. All arrogance aside, we were good, and we knew we were good. We were the biggest fish in the smallest pond.
They were the new talent.
Yeah, we weren't good on a national scale. We weren't good in the, when we were on a ditch line with all of these sword knights that we were going up against and stuff like that. But we stole so much from them and then went back and practiced it. And, this went for the way that we saw other kingdoms do their leadership in politics, the way that we saw them fight. We took everything that we thought would be good and useful, and we brought it back. And then we proudly proclaimed ourselves to be, the masters of the universe in our own little quadrant that we had sectioned off here. And that's young. That's the bad side of pride. That is that's the arrogance that can only be tempered with failure and age and things like that. So,
but I also
we
think
never
that,
failed.
Well, this is what I was going to say. That amount of moxie, that amount of whatever you want to call it, did lead to us eventually becoming our own kingdom. So it like we could have become a kingdom through nicer methods, and we certainly didn't have to hype ourselves, all the way to the moon and back. But I think that to some degree did help us.
Yeah.
Not to say that it was good, and not to say that you should ever do it, but there was a positive to it. We weren't doing this bad thing because we were evil guys and we wanted to just be evil. You were doing it because you were getting some success. You were making some forward progress, and you just couldn't see the negative for the advancement you were making.
Yeah. I mean,
I can be totally wrong here. It's just that's what it seems like to me. I was very new at the time that most of this was happening, but it seemed like every time something happened, we were getting better. We were doing, we were having better events. We were getting better fighters and, getting better awards, that kind of thing. Yeah,
and there was never a time where Shalazar said, "I just don't think that we're going to make it." Like it was, part of what pushed us towards that. Again, arrogance aside and things like that. There was never a time where we said this is just going to be untenable. The attitude that we took with it wasn't the best, and we weren't old enough, I'm going to say, to be able to look at ourselves and say, maybe there's a better way to do this. That came later. That came with age. But the whole way through, Shalazar, everybody that was involved in that early part always said, this is going to happen. We're going to do this. There's no reality where we do not end up becoming our own kingdom. And that was a big driving force the whole way through. And might have been what helped temper some of the attitudes later on, too.
Right. And this kind of brings it full circle. So we have now been a kingdom for, since 2017, I guess.
God, has it been that long?
Yeah, it's very long, and at the same time, not that long at all when you really think about it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we've been a kingdom for almost 4 years now. What's your assessment of things? Now that we've gone from Principality to Kingdom, I know you've not been, you haven't been the king of Winter's Edge, I don't think.
No.
But are you at least tangentially aware? How do you feel like we're doing as a kingdom? What would you like to see us do differently? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, give us your opinion, Emperor Palpatine.
All right. So, actually, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on in the Principality right now.
Kingdom.
I think that's what I said. Shh, play it back, bitches. So I think there's some great stuff going on in the kingdom right now. I do believe that there's a lot of great leaders in the kingdom right now. It's very easy and very nice as a Crown Knight to be able to sit back and go, you know what, I really don't have to do a lot,
Agreed.
because there's people that are stepping up and doing shit, and I think it's fantastic. There's a lot of stuff that we do wrong, but here's my thing for that is show me a kingdom that has it right.
Fair.
Show me a kingdom that's doing it right. Show me a kingdom that's got their shit together, that has zero drama. Show me. There is none. The reason why, and this is what I say to all you listeners that say, "Oh, politics are bad. Politics, blah blah." Fuck you. Because here's the thing: if you have anything that has more than 3 people involved, there's politics. If it's 3 friends, 3 girls that are in a friendship together, there's politics. I guarantee when one of you aren't around, the other 2 are running your fucking mouths about the third one. Guarantee it. That's politics. If you're trying to maneuver yourself to be better than someone else in that group of people, it's politics, plain and simple. In your job, there's politics. In your church, there's politics. If there's a group of people, there's politics. That's all there is to it. You can't get away from it. Do you have to be involved? Unfortunately, you're involved. If you do anything for that organization, you're going to be involved in politics.
Right, by the nature of existing in the thing.
Yeah,
And
you
here's
must
the thing,
play.
guys. Here's the thing. If you're not actively trying to maneuver yourself to be better in that group for the politics, guess what? You're still involved in the politics, except you're the one being manipulated. You're the one not maneuvering. You're the one getting maneuvered. So keep that in mind. If you're in a group of people, there's politics going on, and if you're not the one maneuvering, you're the one getting maneuvered.
Yeah,
Keep that in mind next time you're complaining about politics.
You can't be in it and not of it.
Yeah. So I say that with the idea of the kingdom's doing great. I think we're moving in the right direction. We're trying to get the things fixed that need to be fixed. We're not moving fast enough on some things, but the problem is COVID. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of stuff can't happen because of COVID. I miss all my friends. I miss seeing my friends at events, but unfortunately we can't go to events.
Yep.
So that does suck. That part of AmpGuard does suck. Which I will shamelessly plug an event that I'm working on. I'm still working on it. Things aren't working out quite the way I want it to. That's why I haven't said much lately, but I am planning on doing a virtual reality event that's going to be AmpGuard Survivor. So we've got a lot of people that have offered to make prizes for it, and it's basically the concept is going to be however many people join, I'm going to break everybody up into teams, and then I'm going to give the teams chores to do that can only be done online. Like an example would be you can only pull pictures off of the members of your group, of your team. You can only go on their Facebook and make a collage based off of their photos of the Winter's Edge heraldry.
Oh.
And the
I
best
like that.
and
Yeah, that's really
the best collage wins. You know, everyone else has to kick a member of their team out of the game.
Oh, that's really cool.
Until there's one sole survivor. So the idea is to have games that, I mean, obviously you can't have people hitting each other over the internet. So it's going to have to be games that are just like puzzles, things like that are somehow AmpGuard themed, so to keep people interested in AmpGuard. And then, so that kind of concept. So anyone that wants to help out with design, game design, hit me up, and I'll be happy to work on that. So, but anyway, that's what I have in the works.
Do you want to give out your real Facebook name so people can reach you?
Hell no, there's some stalker bitches out there. No, I'm kidding. Chris Hammonds. If you don't know who I am, just ask. Someone will point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's really cool. I just, if people do want to help out, I'd love, that would be really cool. The collage thing sounds Really awesome.
Yeah, so that was just one of multiple examples that could possibly happen. So, but super excited. I blame my wife. She is a reality show fanatic, and she got me watching Survivor. So we sat down and started at season 1 and went all the way to season 40, whatever it is. And oh my God, there's a lot of them. And so I'm like, this would be cool at AmpGuard, but you could never do this at an event. But a virtual reality event would be cool. So yeah, so that was where the whole idea stemmed from.
Nice. So I have a loaded question for you.
Oh boy.
So
Hey, hasn't all of these been loaded questions?
no,
Surprisingly, no.
yeah, no. This one.
Okay.
So this one's going to be a fun one, but you've been in the game for a long time. Tell me a funny story. We try to kind of start to wrap things up with something that has happened to you or some story that you were a part of that you think that the audience would enjoy and that the statute of limitation has been reached on.
Let's see. So we were in Kentucky and Zeb pulled the tire thumper. No, I shouldn't tell that story.
We need another story. That's not okay.
That one is not okay for public airing.
No.
All right. Well, I could tell. Let's see. I got a lot of funny stories, in my opinion, that are funny. So Zeb Sir Gillen has the habit of I don't know what it is, but he has a habit of just wanting to cause pain to his friends. So being an alpha male myself, I've always been the type of person to say, look, I don't want to be involved in the wrestling because I'm a bigger guy. So for me to wrestle, I'm either going to hurt someone or I'm going to get hurt, and I'm allergic to pain. It makes me break out in blood of someone else's. So basically what I tell people is just don't involve me, because if you involve me, I'm going to hurt the first person that comes at me. That way it sends a message to everyone else. So I'll give you a couple of short ones. One, we were all at the park. It was raining. It was very muddy, and everybody was wrestling around in the mud and getting all muddy. And so I was standing there on the ditch line, perfectly clean, soaking wet because it's raining, but perfectly clean. And a guy named Eddie decided that he was going to get everybody riled up to come and tackle me to do a dog pile, because that's what they were doing. They were tackling people and dog piling them. I'm like, I will tell you right now, I'm going to hurt the first few people. I shouldn't be telling this because this is like COC violations 1, 2, 5, and 17. So the first person that gets to me is Eddie, and I need him in the face. And I warn them because I don't play because I'm afraid, especially with my knees. I don't want my knees hurt. So I need him in the face, and he bounced off of my knee. I mean, I felt bad for my knee.
Yeah, I was going to say, not for Eddie.
And then Chunk decided, who's a bigger guy, but not as big as me, decides he's going to grab my legs. And so me being the nice, gentle person that I am, I just fall on top of him. And so therefore put him on the bottom. So they decide they just all start piling on.
The piranhas were on. It didn't matter who was on the bottom.
Yeah. So Chunk was the one actually on the bottom, and so by the time it was all said and done, my knees were dirty from where I had to stand up, and my hands were dirty from where I was pushing Chunk's back. I mean, he was on his back, so it's not like he was getting a face full of mud. It was the back of his head, but I kept smearing his head into the mud, so he had like a cake of mud in his hair. And I told them, I'm like, you guys can, because they were talking about doing it again. I'm like, you can try to do it again, but I'm going to hurt the first person that comes to me, as Eddie's over there holding his face, and he was pretty too. Poor Eddie. He was so pretty.
That's like a group fighting tactic, though. When you see people coming at you, like, I'm going to kill you. The rest of you might get me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So Shalazar, you may have heard Sir Gillen say this in joking when we were messing around in wrestling or something, but Shalazar is the one that coined that line. It's like the first person there is going to get hurt. It might be you, points to one person.
Yeah.
It might be you, points to one person. But
Yeah.
whoever it is, that person's going to get hurt. So who's it going to be, boys?
So so we went over to Zeb's house one day, and his girlfriend, the crazy one that got me to come out to Amtgard the first day, was dog sitting. And this was a huge dog. And this dog nipped at every single person that came in the house. And it would sit there and growl and bark and nip and everything. So I come in and I sit down on the couch, and I'm sitting there, and I hear this growling in my ear. And I kind of turn, and this dog is standing on the couch face to face with me. Like,
Oh, shit.
thought I was about to get
Big
a face,
dog.
a face full of teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just did the only thing I knew to do, and I just reached up and put it in a headlock. And I told it, and the whole time it's trying to get away, and I've got it in a headlock, and I'm like, you are not going to do this to me. I am the alpha male here, and you are just not going to do it. And so I just sat there and kept watching TV with it in a headlock while it was trying to get away the whole time. Eventually, it stopped moving, not because it was dead, just because it finally gave up because
Right,
it knew I wasn't going to let it go. And so eventually it laid there, put its head on my lap, and never gave me issues ever again. And so from that day on, everybody would be like, don't fuck with Shalazar, he'll alpha male you.
He is the alpha
And so
male.
that's what I would do. Like Zeb at one point, Zeb's a slow learner for everyone out there listening. Zeb is a very slow learner. Zeb, we were at Mystic Glade, and it was a potluck thing. It was our coronation, and he threw a biscuit over his shoulder, hit me right in the forehead. It was real funny until I put him in a headlock and popped his chin or
Yeah.
his jaw.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a slow learner, because then we were at an event, and we were in the 15-passenger van, and, we were like a bunch of, hillbillies, or I don't know what racist,
Analogy.
anyway, analogy, thank you, that you would use, but we were all in one room, because
Yeah.
we would always do that when we would go to events. There would be 15 of us in one 2-bed hotel room.
And you always
to
did the
save
thing
our
where
money.
one person went in to rent the room, and
Oh,
then
yeah,
everybody else
absolutely.
snook up the back. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah,
And
of course,
They
yeah.
knew. The people at the hotel.
Yeah, they didn't get paid enough to care.
No.
Yeah, no, not at all. So anyway, so we would be in there, and so getting ready in the mornings to go to the actual event took forever, because we were waiting for 15 people to get ready. And so I was laying there on the bed, just on my back with my, hands up on the pillow, that kind of thing, behind my head. And Zeb's sitting on the side of the bed, fully dressed in his garb, and he takes the end of his belt and he smacks me across the stomach. Well, I don't know, I have not fought in a really long time, but when I was in my prime, my hands were pretty fast.
Yeah.
Before he could get off the bed, I grabbed the tip of his belt.
Just reel him in like a fish.
I did. So I hand over hand, right up his belt, and by the time I got to the ring, his eyes were the size of, saucers, because
yeah.
I grabbed his nuts and just squeezed.
Yeah, and the whole time, the whole time you're in the room and you're hearing no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, he laid there for quite a while. But, he never really fucked with me much after that.
It takes two, I guess.
Yeah,
For most people, it should take the one.
Yeah.
I
For
want
Zeb,
to
it takes two.
I want to tell a story too. So me and you and Chunk and Beefy had gotten this motel room, not a hotel room, but a motel room. It was the only place we could
Poor
afford.
Beefy.
I think that you had actually paid for the room because none of us had money at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was 2 beds. And folks, this is the worst that it could get. I mean, like, we turned on the light in the bathroom, and the entire bathroom was just moving. You were crying.
I mean,
as
they
you
were
took a
nice
shower.
enough to bring you the toilet paper, though. They were like, hey, welcome. Here's your complimentary toilet paper.
Yeah, a single roll of toilet paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was very nice of the roaches to bring it to us.
Yeah. So, it was. There were like drug deals going on in the parking lot all night. There was. This was.
I mean, that's not much of an exaggeration. Like, Flo telling a story is really exaggerated. That part was not really exaggerated.
Yeah, it was a scary place. But so we finally decided to go to bed, and I am tall at this point, but I hadn't gained any of the weight that I carry now. Chunk is a big guy. Shalazar's a big guy, and
Only sideways when I turn sideways.
yeah, only sideways. And then we have Beefy. Beefy's not a big guy at all. So we were divvying out how the bed situation is going to work, because they're of course these weren't queen size beds. And so me and Chunk take one bed, and Beefy and
Okay, so let me
Shalazar
jump in
take
real
the other.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So actually, Chunk and I were discussing it earlier that day, and we were like, okay, so it's the first night, so it just makes sense, the biggest guy with the smallest guy, and then that kind of thing, so that me and Beefy in one bed, and Flo and Chunk in the other bed. Well, that night, the first night, Beefy rolls out this mat on the ground, and he sleeps on the floor, and I'm like, hell yeah, bed to myself. I'm like, I'm not complaining. So
Right.
we sleep on it, we go to the event, we come back the next night. And this was not told to me until the next day. But apparently he went to Chunk, Beefy did, and went, hey Chunk, is it cool if I could get a bed tonight? And he's like, so this is Chunk's reaction. Yeah, man, Shalazar and I already discussed it. You're with him.
I claimed the skinny one.
Yeah, and so he's like, so this was Beefy's reaction. Fuck, I'm gonna wake up tucked underneath Shalazar's arm while he's sucking his thumb, aren't I? And I wish I would have known that before I woke up the next morning, because that's exactly how he would have woke up. Tucked underneath my arm while sucking my thumb. So ever since then, anytime we went to an event, he would zip himself up. I mean, from head to toe, zip himself up. Like I could possibly maybe stick a finger into the pack to tap him on the head. That's about the only
Smart
length in there. So he would zip himself up, and of course, me being the sweet innocent guy that I am, I would poke him in the side and whisper into the area that his head was. Whisper, "That's not my finger."
And so we're sitting in this hotel room at 2 a.m. because we've all been talking. We can't sleep, and Beefy's bundled up in his mummy bag, sleeping bag thing, and that's what we're listening to. Just the only sound other than the drug deals and gunfire outside is, "That's not my finger. It's not my finger, Beefy."
Stop poking me, fuck. God, I hate it so much. It sucks so bad.
Beefy is sitting there, somewhere over the rainbow, happy place.
And so something else that all of you can think about too while you're surfing old pictures of RV, or actually any time that we visited other parks throughout that time frame, any time that there was a group picture, I would always make sure I was standing next to Beefy. Because every time they would count it down, 3, 2, 1, I would grab his ass.
I gotta go find them all now.
Yeah, so there's very few pictures out there where he's not beside me, and that's only because toward the end he would see a group picture and he would wait for me to get in the group, and then go to the opposite end, or at least somewhere not around me.
Is that why in a lot of the old pictures he looks like a very surprised Mr.
Uh-huh.
Bean?
Yeah,
Yep,
no, people
that's
just
exactly
thought that's
why.
how he looked, but it was because he was having his ass grabbed.
Ah.
Yeah.
Gotta
Poor
go track those
Beefy.
down.
Poor Beefy. He was violated so much. So much.
Well, hey, man, I think that we could probably have you on for 4 or 5 different podcasts and have a good time every time. I want to thank you for coming on, for talking to us a little bit about how the Principality got started up, what it was like in those early times, and your thoughts on where we are now. You know, I want to say for myself that I really appreciate all of the work and dedication that you have put into the game.
100%.
You've put into what is now the Kingdom of Winter's Edge. There's absolutely no way that it would have happened without you. And that's not just because of the actions that you took. It's because of the people that you taught and the things that they learned from you that they then used to carry on even when you had moved on to another area. So thanks so much, brother. Thanks so much for coming on, and hope to have you back on again.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're doing God's work.
Okay, you want to roll this out, man?
Yeah, sure. I'll take us out. Again, thanks everybody for listening. It's been a ton of fun. We may have Shalazar back on in the future. But for now, make sure to subscribe to our Facebook page. Give us a like, share, subscribe on Facebook, Spotify.
So wait, a ton of fun. Is that a fat thing? Are you fat shaming me?
I'm also fat, so like you know.
All right, carry on. My bad.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But yeah, make sure to tune in every week. We've got some cool guests coming up as well. If I've said it 2 times, I'll say it 3 times now. Like, share, subscribe on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. YouTube, absolutely. Thanks, everybody.